practice in Cheltenham in England called Woodlands Veterinary Clinic, and my main duties there are as a consulting nurse. So I don't tend to work out the back now with the animals helping with the operations. I have a consulting room and the owner comes in with their pet and I examine them and just give them check their mouths, their weight, clip their claws or check them after they've had an operation, that sort of thing. And also give lots of advice on diet, whether they're feeding the animal the right food, and also if they've got any problems, behaviour problems. So I also deal a lot with that as well. So, I've been a veterinary nurse now for about 18 years, so quite a long time, so a lot of experience. Now, so that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. The first one, just briefly, is behaviour and training, and this is quite a very popular subject in England because most people's animals live inside the house with them, so if they have any behaviour problems or training problems, it's right there in your face, and so they want to sort it out, so they come and see us and say, my dog's doing this or my cat's doing that, please help me. So that's quite a common thing. But I also help people. I see lots of puppies and kittens that come into the practice, and so what we try and do is train them properly from when they're very young, so that they grow up to be adult dogs or adult cats without big problems. Okay, so it's a lot easier to do it that way. And this is right from the basics of teaching them how to sit down when you tell them to, how to teach them to lie down, on command, how to come to you on command. And probably the very first thing we teach a puppy to do is how to sit. And it's very easy. It's probably the easiest one to teach a puppy to do, because basically most puppies are very like food quite a lot. So what you tend to do is, if you've got your puppy stood up by you, you have a piece of food, a nice piece of treat, and you hold it above them so that their nose pokes up in the air. So you've got the treat, but you don't give it them. And then what happens is, if their nose goes up in the air, usually their bottom follows, so they sit down. And then you've got your sit then. So what you do is, once they have sat down, you then use the word sit. And then the puppy learns then, eventually, that when you say the word sit, I don't know what the word sit is in Vietnamese, but you'd obviously, you might want to use that, then it should sit down, because it expects to have either praise or a treat. So that's very easy. The lying down one's a little bit harder, because you need to have the puppy sat down, and then you have the treat right down on the floor. So say this is the floor, so you have the treat right down on the floor, so the puppy basically puts its legs down to get the treat. And again then, once you've got the behaviour, you use the word for it, so you can then say down. And with training and behaviour, it's much better and much more successful if you reward the behaviour rather than punish them. So if you've got a puppy that's going around, causing havoc and being naughty, what you want to do is ignore that behaviour, and then he'll try and do something to get your attention. And if you give him attention with him being naughty, he'll do more of that behaviour, because he's getting attention. It's very important for dogs and puppies to have attention, because they are pack animals, and so that's very important for them. So you'll get much more out of them if you praise them and say, good boy, well done, if they've done something good, than if you give them lots of negative attention, saying, bad boy, that's very naughty, then they don't learn. They learn much better if you praise them, okay? And then they try and do the behaviours that make them want to please you, basically. With dogs that run off, you're trying to call them back to you, it's always very important to still praise them even when they come back to you, even if they've taken their time and not come back to you straight away. You still should praise them, because otherwise, if you tell them off for taking so long to come back to you, then you know the next time they'll think, well, it's not no point coming back because you told me off. Okay. A lot of dogs in England and cats are very fat. A lot of people feed them a lot of food, and they get very fat. So, and that's one of the things that I do have to help a lot of people with their pets that are very fat. And one of the things that is worth knowing is that a dog needs a lot less calories than a human being does. So when people say, well, I only gave him a biscuit, just one biscuit, that dog eating that one biscuit would be like you or I eating a whole packet of biscuits. So you can see they can soon start putting lots of weight on if you do that. But it's also very important that they have exercise. So obviously cats tend to exercise themselves, but dogs ideally should have 2 walks a day. And if you can, obviously, especially in this country, it's much safer that you take them out on the lead or the leash, because you know they could run out into the road and get run over, and the roads are very busy. But they could also, you know, get into trouble in other areas. So it's best if you keep them on the lead, unless you know it's an open area where it's safe to let them off. Okay. Now let's move on to the next thing. If you've got any questions at the end, you know, I'll be able to answer them for you. Okay. Skin problems. Has anybody got any pets that have got skin problems? They're losing their hair or their skin looks sore or anything? I've seen a few dogs around Vietnam that do look like they've got a few skin problems. And probably one of the biggest things that can cause a skin problem in dogs and cats is, I wonder if anybody can tell me what this is. Do you know what that is? What is it? It's obviously a magnified picture of a flea. So they move around in the coat and they can jump as well. They've got a very sort of, the flea breeds very quickly. So usually if you've seen one flea on your pet, the chances are over the last few hours it's laid 50 eggs. And within sort of 10 days, those eggs hatch out into a larvae, and then they hatch out into another adult flea, who then goes off and lays 50 eggs. So you can imagine you can quickly get what we call an infestation of fleas, and you know, dogs will be scratching and everything. But one of the problems with fleas as well is obviously it causes the skin to be extremely itchy, and some of the dogs and cats will scratch themselves so much that they break the skin and the skin gets very sore, and then you can end up with a dermatitis in that skin because infection has got in, so lots of bacteria has got in because the skin barrier has been broken. Okay, but also a lot of cats and dogs are allergic to fleas. You're all aware what allergies are? Allergies, some people are allergic to certain soaps, or you know, it might cause you to get a skin rash, you know, that's, or in, well, basically what happens is the body, your immune system, treats, when the flea bites, the immune system of the dog or cat thinks that it's being invaded, so it overacts over that and produces lots of what we call histamine, which causes lots of redness and itchy all over, not just where they've been bitten. Okay, and so that makes things a lot worse then, because not only are they itchy because the fleas are actually biting and moving through the coat and on the skin, but also their body is making them even more itchy because it's got an allergy to it. Okay. and that's what we call a flea allergic dermatitis. Like I said, that's quite common. So what you need to do ideally is get a treatment from a veterinary surgery, and you can get spot-ons. It's like a liquid pipette that you put onto the skin on the back of the neck, and that moves through the whole skin, and so when the fleas jump on, it kills them. So you know, that's the best way of treating that. Now also you've got to be careful. Some dogs need to have baths or shampoos and things, but you've got to be careful what you use on them as well, because their skin is very different to ours, and so a lot of our shampoos are too harsh for their skin. So again, you could cause them to have an allergy for that. So if in doubt, just warm water, wash them with warm water. But unfortunately, by shampooing them, it does not kill fleas. They will just jump back on again. You know, so you need a proper treatment from the vets. Okay. Let's move on. Now, this is a poster here about the flea allergic dermatitis that I was just talking about. Okay. So it's got the so there's the flea biting the skin. Okay, and it injects some of its saliva under the skin so that it can suck the blood out, and then that gets all inflamed. Okay, it sets off this reaction in the body that we talked about, and then all the inflammation causes so much itchiness that the dog scratches itself sore, especially around these areas. You see a lot of dogs with bald areas, so that they've lost the hair and the skin's very sore in this area. And then, of course, that breaks the skin, so the bacteria can get in, and then they can have quite an advanced infection there, and a dermatitis, basically. In some cases, you know, the only thing that will clear it up is antibiotic tablets from the vets. All right. Now, this poor little dog has an infection of mites. It's not a very good picture, I'm afraid, but this is a microscopic picture, so under the microscope, okay, of this mite, and what it's done is, you can't see it very well on there, which is not very good, but basically all this hair has come off the poor dog's face there, and it's really sore, his skin. And what this mite does is it actually buries underneath the skin, so it doesn't just bite, it actually lives in the hair follicles. So where the hair is underneath the skin, where it starts and grows, they like to live under there, but they cause such intense itching that the dog rubs itself and scratches itself till it bleeds, and it's really sore because it's just so itchy. Okay, and again, you need to get a proper treatment from the vets. Now, some of the treatments for these mite problems will also kill the fleas at the same time. So it's an all-in-one treatment. So it's, you know, so if your dogs or cats are suffering for any of this, it's a good idea to, you know, get down your vets and get some of that. If you want to check if your dog or cat has got fleas as well, they do tend to produce. Fleas quite often move out of the way, so if you go to look through the coat, they scurry out of the way so you can't see them, but they do leave a lot of droppings which look like tiny little black commas, so they're like, they look like that. And if you were to get that wet, so if you had a bit of tissue paper and you found the little black bits on your pet's coat and put them onto some wet tissue paper, if it's flea dirt, it turns reddish colour, okay? Whereas if it's normal dirt off the road, it'll just stay brown. Whereas if it's flea dirt, it mixed with water, it goes red, and that's because obviously the only thing that fleas eat is blood, basically, so it comes out in their feces. Ticks, another skin skin thing. So I'll just go to the picture of ticks. Again, these are another blood-sucking parasite that dogs and cats commonly get. So have you seen these before? No. You're not looking on. But this is both the same. This is a tick that's not had its blood meal, basically, and this is an engorged tick. So this tick comes along, jumps onto your pet, your cat or your dog, and it buries its mouth parts and its head under the skin. So it bites on the skin and then buries it right under it. It almost produces a cement-like substance that keeps it stuck in there. So even if the dog sort of shakes or knocks it, the tick stays in there with just its body, just its body hanging out. And they tend to like to go in areas around the ears or just inside the ears. They don't go right inside the ears usually, but sort of they're quite often quite hidden. And some people think that they look a bit like a skin growth rather than a natural insect. But this obviously is a huge difference in size to this, and that's because this is very stretchy, the skin on here, so it fills up with blood, keeps feeding. Now, it's quite important to check your pets for these because you can get some nasty diseases transmitted by these creatures, because they may have a nasty disease in them, and then what happens is when they bury that under the skin of the cat or the dog, they suck it all up first, the blood, and then after they've been on there about 2 days or 48 hours, they start to get rid of their waste material, and they don't poo or produce feces or anything like that. What they do is they have another tube within here that they excrete it back out into the animal. So it's horrible, really. They use the animal as a toilet, basically. And that's when, obviously, any of the diseases it might be carrying gets put into the animal. So if you see a tick on your pet, if you check your pet every day, you'll know if you see a new tick on it, and you know if you can remove that tick before the 48 hours, then there's much less chance of that tick transmitting a disease, basically, into the pet, okay? Now, because they cement their mouth parts under the skin, you mustn't just grab them and pull them straight off, because what you'll probably end up doing then is ripping all this off and leaving that underneath the skin. So the best way of doing it is to gently twist, and as you're twisting, you lift up, okay? And that should release the head parts as well. If the mouth parts do stay under the skin, they usually will cause an infection in that area, and they can have quite a nasty big swelling and infection in that area after that. So you know, quite important to try and check your pets for them and remove them when you see them, because obviously you don't want them getting diseases. Also, obviously, it's best to get your pets vaccinated if you can as well from some of these diseases that they can get. So, which again you'd have to have done at the vets. Now then. Oh, worms.
It's a good job this is after lunch.
Yeah, you all had your lunch. So this is what we call intestinal worms, which means basically worms that live in the intestines. This is a tapeworm. It's not a brilliant picture again, is it? But if you can see, it's all in segments. Okay, and what happens is the head of the tapeworm, this end, attaches the big teeth clamp-like things inside the gut and in the intestine wall, and will just keep itself on there. So anything that passes past it, it stays on there because it's so tightly held up there. These segments here are called proglotid segments, and they are basically full of eggs, each one of these. And what happens is, when they're ready, so all the eggs are developing along here, and when it's ready it breaks off, and then it comes out of the cat or the dog's bottom. And they're quite sticky, so they're usually stuck around the hair at the bottom of the cat or the dog. And they almost look, they're probably about the size of a grain of rice, so don't mistake them for rice, will you? Now, they can get this tapeworm eggs as well from, believe it or not, fleas. Because the flea, you know, I told you that you have an adult flea that lays eggs and then it hatches into a larvae, which is like a very tiny worm thing. Well, what that larvae does is it eats all sorts of things on the floor, including flea feces, poo, but it also eats some of these eggs as well. And so you can have a tapeworm larvae developing inside a flea. So when that flea emerges as an adult flea, it's much slower than the other fleas. So when it moves through the coat, it's quite a bit slower. So when you see your dog or your cat suddenly go like that because it can feel a flea, most fleas would quickly move out of the way and not get eaten. But because this flea with the tapeworm larvae in it is much sluggish and slower, it doesn't move out of the way in time, so your cat or dog goes to eat it, ingests it, and that's how the tapeworm gets inside the dog or the cat. And they can also get it from eating mice and birds as well. So it's a good idea just to have a quick look under your dog or cat's tail, and if you see anything that looks like grains of rice stuck around, then you need to get in some medicine to kill those worms, okay? Now that's the tapeworm. There are different types of tapeworms as well, but they pretty much all do that same thing, okay? And then the other type of worm is what we call a roundworm, because obviously there's no segments on it, it's nice and smooth, okay, so it's rounded. So that's the roundworm, and that's very common as well in dogs and cats. And there's lots and lots of different types of roundworms as well. They probably can be the more dangerous of the worms, because whereas your tapeworm just likes to stay in the gut, your roundworms, you can get some that like to live in the lungs, you can get some that like to live in the heart, and they can breed so much that the heart can be full of them. And obviously, that's going to kill your pet, you know, if it's got an infestation in the heart. So there's lots of different types of those, but again, because of the way this roundworm basically can be it affects the puppies. When a dog has puppies, it can produce the eggs of this through the milk, and also it's produced in dogs' feces as well. So when dogs go along and sniff other dogs' feces, or they pick up some rubbish or some food next to where a dog has been to the toilet, then they can pick up the eggs, and then the worms can develop inside them as well. So regular worming is very important in your dogs and cats as well. So, and it's very easily treated with medication, but obviously you want to avoid it before they get them, like heartworm or lungworm, because obviously that can cause a lot more problems then. Okay. Right. We've got next. I think that's it for the horrible pictures now. Teeth. Right. So now, I don't know if any of you very often look in your pet's mouths to look at their teeth. It's probably none of you really. It's something that we're trying to increase more in England, because we do see a lot of very bad teeth. And I have got some pictures here as well in these leaflets. A lot of people don't even notice when their their cat or their mouse teeth have gone bad. All they sometimes notice is that their breath is very smelly, and so they say, "Oh my God, get away from me," or they might give them something to eat to try and make their breath smell nicer. But usually, it's their breath smells like that because of the bacteria that's built up in their mouth, and usually infection as well. So, and that dog's got lovely clean teeth there. See if I've got this is, where are we? Yeah, so this is a picture of dog's teeth. This one has just started getting a bit of tartar or plaque starting to build up there, and then it turns into this calculus or tartar, that means the same thing. And then you can see the gums are starting to get red and swollen, and that's what we call gingivitis. And then it all gets infected, and the dog's breath will be smelling bad at this point. Okay, and this is a cat's mouth, so that's good. That's a normal cat's mouth there, and you can see where it's starting to get the tartar build up there, and it's causing the gums to get all inflamed and swollen, and then it gets worse basically. Really, that tooth needs removing under there, but it can be prevented. The same as, what would happen if we didn't brush our teeth? I'm sure we would have awful breath, and and we would lose a lot more teeth, than we do. So, and it's the same with cats and dogs really, but they don't tend to get as many cavities as we do. So, we might get a hole in our tooth and we go to the dentist and they'll put a filling in it. They don't tend to get that so much. Their saliva is different to ours, so it sort of, it reduces that happening. But they do get this tartar buildup. So, and it's only ever on the outsides of the teeth. It's never on the insides of the teeth, on the insides of the mouth. Okay, it's only ever on the outsides. So, if you're going to brush your dog's or cat's teeth, a bit harder with cats. Easier if you can stop them from they're a little kitten. But other than that, they might go, you get scratched. But yeah, if you can clean their teeth, just once a day, you don't need to do it twice a day, and you just literally do on the outsides, and you do over the gum as well, so that you're removing that bacteria that's not going to cause all the gums to get really red, the gingivitis basically that we're talking about. So that is a special American double-sided toothbrush. I must admit, I don't ever use these in the practice at home. I don't feel they're very good really, but the best sort are like the toothbrush that we use basically. So just the one-sided one. You can buy them that are just for dogs. I haven't seen them in this country, but the only difference is they're shaped so that you can use them. They're shaped to be used on someone else opposed to the ones we have that are designed to be used on ourselves, So, and I wouldn't advise that you use our toothpaste either, because if our toothpastes have foaming agents in them. So when we clean our teeth, there's a lot of foam, isn't there? And you've got to spit that out. Well, dogs and cats, thankfully, can't spit. And you can't teach them to spit either, thankfully. Otherwise they might be spitting at you when you're walking down the road or something. But what you could do, so you either just use a plain toothbrush with water and no toothpaste, or you could use a child's toothpaste, because very young children's toothpaste is designed that it won't hurt them if they do eat it, because again, some young children, it's very difficult to get them to spit it out. So you could either use that, but I wouldn't use, an human adult's toothpaste, okay? So that's your projects to go home and do, start cleaning your pet's teeth. Now, let's have a look. And obviously, if you can try and avoid feeding lots of sugary foods, that will help as well. Right then. Okay. Ooh, that's in a minute. Emergencies. So, one of the common emergencies that we see are poisoning, and that's basically because dogs mainly tend to do a lot of what we call scavenging. So they'll go along, see something on the floor, and go, "Ooh, that smells nice. I'll eat that," and they'll just eat it. You know, and it might, you know, it might be wrapped in a plastic bag or something like that as well, which can cause a problem as well. But it could be something like medication even. Some of our headache tablets, ibuprofen, quite often have a sugar coating on them. Now those are very, very poisonous to dogs, and they will damage their kidneys. Okay, so just because we can have them for a headache doesn't mean to say that it's okay for them. And there are a lot of drugs that we use in human medicine that we can use in dogs and cats, but there's also a lot of medicines, human medicines, that are very toxic, so very poisonous to dogs and cats. And there's also some medicines that are okay for dogs, but they will be very poisonous for cats, and vice versa. So you know, it's always worth checking first rather than, you know, self-medicating your pets, all right? But there's a lot of poisons as well that you might not think are poisons out there. I mean, is everybody aware that chocolate is poisonous to cats and dogs? Yeah, there's an enzyme in it that is fine for us. It's not toxic for us, but it's very poisonous to dogs and cats, and it can damage their heart and their kidneys, basically. But also very large amounts of onions and garlic, if they were to eat a lot of it in one go, can affect their red blood cells, and it can make them anemic. So it can damage those red blood cells, so that's worth knowing as well. So if there's a big pot of onions and garlic lying there, make sure the dog can't get it, because he might eat the whole thing, and that would cause a problem. Wouldn't really cause a problem if he ate little bits of it here and there, you know, but if he had a big bowl full of it, then it would cause a problem, okay? Also, raisins, sultanas, currants, you know, the little dried grapes, they're poisonous to dogs as well. So again, can be very palatable to them. You know, they find them, a lot of them, and they might eat them, but again, that can really damage their kidneys, basically, and you know, and potentially kill them. So, avocado is another one that's poisonous to dogs. They're poisonous to cats as well, but generally cats don't tend to eat anything, do they? They're very much, cats are very meat orientated, so they'll just they're true carnivores, whereas dogs are omnivores, so they'll eat meat and vegetables, so more of a scavenger. If you've got some foods that have gone very rotten, so say for example they were in the street and it was really rotten, the rat cleared it up already, and your dog ate that, some of the bacteria that can ferment in that waste can be very toxic as well, so that can really be poisonous to them as well. So it's worth, you know, avoiding, trying to get your dog not to eat rubbish that it finds in the streets. Okay. You've also got to be very careful of rat and mouse poisoning as well, because obviously that's quite a common one, you know, that dogs will eat. Also, obviously, cats can get quite ill if they've eaten a mouse or a rat that has eaten rat poison. So there's also a few plants out there that are poisonous to cats and dogs as well. Lilies being one of them. Even the pollen on lilies is very toxic. Could easily kill a cat if they were to eat just one bit of the pollen. So plant fertilizers, so things you might, if you've got a plant fertilizer that you want to put in your plants in your garden or in your yard, you know, or in the house, if that can sometimes taste quite sweet, that can be very toxic as well. So you've got to be careful of all these things, and a lot of detergents as well. You know, if a cat gets a detergent or something oil spilt on it, it's very important that you wash it off that cat, because what a cat does, if it gets something on it, its fur, even if it doesn't like the taste of it, it will wash it and lick it all off to try and get itself clean, and obviously it's going to then ingest that poison. Okay, so it's best to wash it off your pet first. Okay. Now, if your dog or cat gets hit or run over by a car or a motorbike, it's very important that you pick him up very fast. Try and keep him flat on his side, because if he has got any injuries, sometimes you can make him worse by picking him up and bending him and that sort of thing. Okay. If there is any, if there's an injury where there's a trauma and the pet is bleeding and there's a lot of blood coming out, you need to obviously stop that blood from coming out, otherwise it will die. If it loses so much blood, you know, that's it, it will die, the same as with us. So what you need to do is try and put some pressure on that point where it's bleeding. Now, you can either literally just use your fingers, so nice and flat with quite a bit of pressure there. And what will happen is it will give the body time for the blood to clot, basically, and form a clot there. If you haven't got, you know, or if you've got a nice clean cloth or something, you can put that on there and keep it compressed, all right? Because obviously it's very important that it loses as little blood as possible, okay? Otherwise you're going to be in trouble. If your pet has broken its leg, for whatever reason, falling from a height or being run over, and you can see the bones sticking out of the leg, what you want to do then is try not to move it, but try and cover it over with a clean piece of cloth if you can, because it's very at risk of having a very serious infection inside the bone, and that's very hard to treat. Soft tissue infections, so around the skin and the muscle, and so the meaty areas are easier to treat than if you get infection actually inside the bone. Okay, so it's quite important to cover that over with a clean piece of cloth to stop the bacteria in the air getting onto it. Okay, and obviously in that instance you need to get the dog to the vet in emergency. Some vets will actually, what they'll do is they'll give that dog or cat an anaesthetic, and they can fix that leg. They can put the bone back together and put a pin in it or put wire around it and then a dressing on. But in some very severe fractures, the limb has to be amputated, and most pets can still cope very well with just 3 legs. You know. They've got another 3 anyway, they're lucky. So it's always worth finding out, because of these possible emergencies that could happen, it's always worth finding out who and where your local vet is. Even some vets will, even if you've got an emergency and you want to know what to do, you quite often can just ring them and they will give you advice over the phone without you even going to see them. So it's always worth knowing, where they are, basically. Now, the heat stroke is another one I wanted to talk about. I mean, obviously it's a bit cooler now than it normally is in the summer, but certainly in the summer it can get very, very hot. So you don't want your dog running around doing too much exercise when it's very hot. Now, dogs can sometimes be a bit stupid, and they will be having so much fun running around and chasing each other that they won't realise that they're so hot because they're having so much fun. And when they do realise that they're very hot, they collapse, basically. And it's very important that if they get this heat stroke or overheating, they need to be cooled down really, really quickly, because it can be, that can cause death, basically. So one of the best ways of doing that is cold water. So you know, you can hose them down with cold water. One of the quickest ways of cooling them down is to put cold water on the insides of their back legs, so on their tummy and on the insides of their back legs. And the reason for that is there's the femoral arteries, they're the biggest sort of external arteries in the body, and so if you can get the cold water on those, it's going to cool that down, which is going to take it to the rest of the body. Okay, and obviously you can offer him a little cold drink if he wants it, but if he's got to the point where he's collapsed, you're probably not going to get him to drink, so it's very important to try and cool him down quickly. The normal temperature, body temperature for a cat and a dog is between 38 degrees Celsius and 39 degrees Celsius. The average is obviously about 38.5 degrees. So if your dog or cat has a temperature over 39 degrees, then it's got a temperature basically, so a high temperature. And obviously the higher that goes, the more at risk that pet is of, you know, if its life, losing its life basically. So I don't know, how are we doing for time? We'll do questions in a minute. So there we go. So, any questions? Anybody? Yes, you?
I have 4 questions.
You have 4 questions?
Firstly, is there any chance that the human can get the disease when we touch the dogs with the disease?
Well, there.
For example, fleas.
Well, generally, the most common flea that we see is the cat flea. Even your dog, even fleas that are on your dog are the cat flea. Basically, they like to live with the dog, so dog flea is not very common. Now, they will sometimes jump on us and bite us, but they don't like to live on us, so they might just bite and jump off. Okay, especially if you've got the infestation that I told you about, because there's so many of them that you're bound to have the odd one that jumps on you. We don't tend to see the disease transmission through to humans from that. Obviously, you're more at risk with that with ticks. We can get infections from ticks, but that's if a tick has been bitten another human that's infected and then it gets on us. But again, it's not very common for humans to get ticks either, because they tend to prefer the animals and they jump on, well, they're lower from the ground, you know, so they'll be on plants and things, and as the dog or cat walks through, it jumps on, basically. So, you know, obviously the big disease that we worry about is rabies. And that's transmittable by a dog or a cat, you know, biting you basically, that has the disease. So again, if you can, it's very sensible and recommended that you get your dogs vaccinated and your cats against rabies. Now we don't routinely vaccinate against rabies in England because luckily we're a rabies-free country, and that's why our quarantine rules are very strict about animals coming in. You know, but any dogs and cats that are being exported from our country have to have the rabies vaccine then. So, you've got another question?
Yeah. My dog's always eats so many leaves, and he destroyed the whole garden. But I don't know how to stop him doing that.
Well, has he got toys of his own?
No.
Ah, well there you are, he's bored.
Ah, okay.
Dogs have quite large brains, basically, and most of that brain is designed for hunting and scavenging for food. And obviously when we have them as pets, we feed them, don't we? So they don't really have to do that, so they get bored. And if he's not having a lot of exercise as well, then then he's just doing his instincts and just keeping busy basically.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is try and get him some chew toys. You get him chew sticks that made of rawhide. Yeah, rawhide chew is very good because they last quite a long time and they sit there and chew it there. But also anything like what you could use is a big empty water bottle, you know, the ones about that size, not the small ones, you know, the big ones about that size. Obviously take the lid off it, put some of his food inside it and give it him on the floor. And so what he has to do then is roll it around so that bits of the food fall out of it, and it's making him use his brain, you know, and therefore he's less likely to damage anything else. So yeah, they need a lot of what we call mental stimulation, basically, and that, you know, you'll find that he'll be much better behaved if you give him more to do.
Yeah, when my dog eats all the leaves, my mum said that he might be very hungry and need more food. That's not true.
No, it's more likely just to be that he's bored.
Yeah.
Yeah, so give him something to do.
Okay, another question is my cat.
Yeah.
Meow, meow, all the time, and she said that for about a half a year.
Okay, how old is she, sorry?
7 years old.
7 years old.
So it's quite annoying, but we can't stop her from saying meow, meow all the time.
No?
Does she, yeah. does she go outside?
No.
No, okay. So she could be bored as well. Oh, your pets are bored. But she could be bored as well, and because, you know, she's not going out and about and sort of stalking things and trying to catch birds and things like that, and mice, you're her only source of amusement, basically, and so she's focusing on you for attention because she's probably bored. So these torches, now mustn't shine them in their eyes, the same as we mustn't shine them in our eyes because it will damage your retina, okay, and it will damage their retina. Cats absolutely love these, and what you can do is, they think it's a bit like a mouse, you can go along the floor, you can do this, and you can, my cat, I've got one of these at home, if you go up the wall like that, he starts doing star jumps up the wall. It's like, you can do cat aerobics. So, you know, and you can get your cat to run around and race around on the floor and do that sort of thing. And they like, you can have things, tie some string onto a stick and do, get him to chase, do all that sort of thing, because he's probably bored as well.
Yeah, so she, after she got vaccine, then she stopped growing. Then just very small cats and say meow meow all the time. Yeah. So we thought that is the affection from the vaccine, the influence.
Well, does she seem healthy though?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more likely to be a behaviour that she's learnt. Because what happens when she does this meow meow meow, you go, what is it? Oh, shut up! What's all that noise? You know. And so she's going, oh great, it worked. I've got your attention. And so she does it.
And the last one is how long can a cat or dog can live?
How long
can a dog or cat live?
Oh, well that does vary on the environment, how well it's looked after, but sometimes it's down to genetics, so it depends on how healthy that line of animal is, its genes basically. Now cats, 14 to 18 years old, and dogs, bigger the dog usually, the less amount of years. But so usually for big dogs, probably about 10 to 12, and then smaller dogs up to about 14, maybe even 15. We have, you know, in England, probably the oldest cat that I've known of though was 25 years old. Yeah, he was a lovely cat. Yeah, but 25 years old. But we regularly see, in my practice, sort of 18, 19-year-old cats. We look after them very well. We do regular blood tests on them to make sure that their kidneys are okay. And if they're not, we can then put them on the right treatment, and it helps them live longer, happier life, you know. And the same with dogs. when they get older, they can get very arthritic. So they're like old people can get arthritis where they're very sore to walk and things. The dogs get that as well, and there's medication that we can give them so they can live longer and things. So it's but those are the sort of averages really. Has anybody else got any questions? Yeah.
When my cats go to bees, I see more blood.
When he does what, sorry?
When my cats go to bees,
right,
I see more blood.
Okay. Is it a male cat or a female cat? Male cat. Okay. Yeah, that can be quite serious if he gets blocked. So if he's trying to pee and he can't pee,